right, so let's talk about pregnancy prevention, especially for people who don't want to expose themselves to hormones and people who are not very comfortable with latex and condoms. I feel like natural conception options work best for couples that are in a relationship where they are open to life, even though they are trying to space it. If you're married, but you're being wise and you're being intentional, but you're not necessarily trying to force absolute control at the expense of your health or future fertility, this conversation is for you. Because once you get to the point where you're saying, I absolutely cannot get pregnant under any condition, then you're not really looking at a natural rhythm anymore. You're looking for a guarantee. Even condoms are not 100% guaranteed. And natural methods don't offer guarantee, but they offer alignments. Look, guys, there are no guarantees in life, but I know alignment and room to trust God is a good frame of mind to adopt. And that brings me to something that most people completely overlook. The fact that the man is not a spectator in this process. He's a major part of whether natural contraception succeeds or fails. Because think about it, who will control the timing of the intercourse? Who controls withdrawal? Who supports discipline during fertile windows? So if you are thinking natural method, the man is very important. If the man is not in it, call it work. Don't worry, you carry belly. Anyway, natural family planning is a partnership. And it requires awareness from the both parties, and then awareness from the woman, restraints and leadership from the man. In this video, I'm not just going to give you tips or random methods. I'm going to show you how you are going to engage systems that respects your body and protects your long-term health and gives you a high level of control without relying on hormones. So let's get to it. But before we start talking about methods or anything practical, you need to understand that one thing that will determine whether this works for you or not is the fact that there are only a few days in a woman's cycle that pregnancy is actually likely. And that window is just a small window. That window is called the fertile window. And that's where most people get it wrong. They try to prevent pregnancy every single day instead of understanding when pregnancy is even possible in the first place. It's like trying to lock your doors all day when the real issue is knowing when somebody is actually coming. Your body already gives you signals. It's subtle, but it's consistent. So your cycle length, changes in cervical mucus, slight shifts in body temperatures, these are your body's signals in communicating with you. So if you learn to read these signs, you will stop guessing, you stop depending on luck, you start making decisions based on awareness. So before we go any further, the things I've talked about sounds like for people whose cycle is regular. If your cycle is irregular, before anything else, because everything I just talked about, tracking fertility, only works best when your cycle has some level of consistency. But if your cycle is all over the place, on some days 24, some days 40, and sometimes you skip entirely, that is a signal in itself that you need to work on. An irregular cycle is often a sign that something in the body is out of balance, especially hormonally. So instead of being comfortable trying to walk around it, yes, there are ways to walk around it, but the wiser approach is to find out what your body is trying to tell you, because it's reflecting what is happening internally in your body. Some of the common root causes of an irregular cycle is chronic stress, poor sleep, blood sugar instability, nutrient deficiencies, significant weight change, PCOS, thyroid dysfunction. And why it matters for family planning is the fact that if ovulation is inconsistent, your fertile window is also inconsistent. So you can get pregnant any day. So you see why it's important. And even if conception happens, the environment may not be stable enough to support the pregnancy. So it's actually something that on both ends is very important that You don't just get comfortable trying to walk around your irregular cycle, but you fix where the problem is. And for what you can do, start with the foundations. Stabilize your blood sugars, balanced meals, reduce excessive sugar spikes, prioritize sleep because your hormones reset at night. Manage stress intentionally. Eat nutrient-dense foods, especially those ones that are rich in iron, zinc, B vitamins. Get sunlight regularly. It supports your hormonal rhythm. And most importantly, if your cycle is irregular, don't rely heavily on timing alone for contraception. You need stronger layers of discipline and protection until your cycle becomes more predictable, because the goal is not just to prevent pregnancy today. The goal is to protect your long-term fertility so that when you do want to conceive, your body is ready. And with that in mind, we can now move on to the second layer. What actually happens during the fertile window and what you need to do differently. So now that you understand when pregnancy is actually possible, what do you do during the fertile window? Because this is where everything comes together or everything falls apart. Now remember that during this window, the chances of pregnancy are at their highest. So your options during this time is what I want to talk about. Like I said, it's just a short window, most of the time, at most 5 days. That's all. So one option during that time is abstain during the fertile windows. That's the most natural, most straightforward approach. No risk, no confusion, but it requires discipline. And again, this is where the man plays a major role. If one partner is committed and the other one is not, the system breaks. Option 2, use a barrier method. Condoms. They are non-hormonal, they are immediate, effective when they are used properly. So at least during that window, even if you don't like condoms, in that window, use condoms. It gives you a layer of protection without interfering with the body's natural rhythm. Option 3, withdrawal. Now let's be honest here. This requires a high level of control, awareness, and timing from the man. The pull-out method can be quite effective. When it's used perfectly, it can be effective up to 96%. So the remaining 4% comes from the fact that pre-ejaculation can contain sperm. Sometimes, even when done correctly, there's still some risk. And again, this is where the man becomes critical. His awareness, his self-control, and his willingness to take responsibility. All of these determine whether this works or not. And like I said earlier, if only one person is carrying the burden, it's not going to work. Now, I'm going to talk about the fertility awareness management method. You know, there are apps like Natural Cycles, Clue, and Flow that can help you track your cycle, your symptoms, and your pattern over time. Now, these apps are tools. They can help you, and for it to help you very well, you will need to log your cycle consistently, track signs like temperature and symptoms to identify patterns over time. And when they are used properly, they can help you better estimate your fertile window. But the key is that you need to understand that the app is only as accurate as the data that you give it. If you're inconsistent with data, coupled with irregular cycle, the predictions may not be reliable. The fertility awareness can still work even with irregular cycle, but it would require more discipline, more observation, and less guesswork. So don't treat the app like a fortune teller. Treat it like a journal, something that helps you see what your body has been doing, not something that tells you what your body will do with absolute certainty. This is why even with apps, you need the system. You need awareness, discipline, and shared responsibility. Because when used correctly, it can actually make natural family planning much easier, much more structured, no hormones and whatnot. I mean, it can really, really work. Then let's talk about herbs. Now, I know herbs is where people get curious, because the truth is some herbs can actually prevent pregnancy. Even though herbs are powerful and they work, they don't switch fertility on and off. So instead of thinking, which herb can I use to prevent pregnancy, the better question is, what herb fits within a natural system? And so we're going to talk about a few of them. The first one is neem. Neem is widely used in traditional medicine. And one of the reasons why people bring this into the natural planning conversation is because of its effects on sperm. Some studies suggest that it may reduce sperm activity or may have some mild spermicidal properties. But limitation is that there's no standardized dose and there's no consistent human data for contraception, no guarantee of outcome. And that's why I said natural methods are good for people who are open to life. Next is Queen Anne lace. Queen Anne's lace is traditionally used after intercourse because it prevents implantation. Then another one they use is papaya seeds. Papaya seeds may reduce sperm count and sperm motility. So in simple terms, fewer sperms, and the ones that are present don't move as effectively. And if sperm cannot move properly, their chances of reaching the egg is reduced. So functionally, the idea makes sense. And the good thing about the papaya seed is that their effects were described as reversible after stopping use. And that's one of the reasons why people get excited about it. Then again, most of this evidence is not from large human trials. It's not standardized in terms of dosage. It's not consistent across individuals. So like I said, these natural methods are for people that are open to life, but they are looking for something that can possibly help them space. Okay? Papaya seed also contain compounds that affect digestion, influence enzyme, and potentially stress the liver. So you cannot just use it indiscriminately. Low amounts, especially as part of food, is usually fine, but using it consistently to try to suppress fertility would move to uncertain territory. And like I said, that window is where you are looking at, the fertility window. So you may not necessarily have to use these herbs like neem or papaya seeds every single day, right? So maybe just use it around that period where you are most fertile. Now, let's bring balance into this conversation, because on one extreme, you have people who will do anything to avoid pregnancy, even if it means harming their body in the process. On the other extreme, you have people who are careless, with no structure, no awareness, no responsibility. But wisdom sits in the middle. We don't believe in harming the body just to gain control. We also don't believe in being careless. We believe in understanding the body and working with it and making informed decisions, informed, intentional decisions. And for those of us who are in the faith and who have faith, there's also peace in knowing that while you are doing your own part with wisdom, you are leaving room for God to do whatever he wants to do, right? And like I said, the best set of people who this approach is for are people who are married, people who are open to life, even if they're trying to space it, and those who want to avoid hormonal issues and protect their long-term health. Even pills are never foolproof. So I advise participation and awareness and a level of acceptance if life comes. And finally, let's bring everything together. Natural conception is not just about one trick. It's not about one herb, one method, one shortcut. It's really about building a system that works for you. So for you, in that period, your system may be understanding your entire calendar. And then when you understand your calendar and you understand your fertility window, what you do in that period in the fertility window can predict whether you get pregnant or not. So the goal is not perfection, but wisdom, not control at all costs, but alignment. And when you understand that, you stop chasing quick fixes and you start building something that actually works. Ultimately, my top pick in this entire natural family planning is either abstinence or the withdrawal method. Also, I like the idea of fertility awareness using technology and the calendar method. But ultimately, put your trust in God.